Let's get ready for the South Dakota Real Estate Exam with 100 questions covering key state laws, principles, and practices you'll need to know. And keep an eye on the bottom corner. There's something there that could make a big difference in your prep. We'll tell you how to use it in just a minute. Now, let's get started.
Let's begin with a look at South Dakota licensing requirements and procedures. South Dakota licensing requirements and procedures. What is the minimum age requirement to apply for a real estate license in South Dakota? Is it A, 16 years old, B, 21 years old, C, 18 years old, or D, 25 years old? The answer is C, 18 years old. In South Dakota, individuals must be at least 18 years old to apply for a real estate license. This ensures that applicants are legally recognized as adults and can enter into binding contracts. Which of the following is required to complete the pre-licensing education in South Dakota? Is it A, 60 hours, B, 16 hours, C, 150 hours, or D, 90 hours? The answer is B, 16 hours. South Dakota mandates 116 hours of pre-licensing education for aspiring real estate agents. This comprehensive training covers essential topics and prepares candidates for the licensing exam.
Have you noticed the code in the bottom corner? Next time you're stumped, take that code to birdsy.ai for immediate help and a free study session with Birdsy, your personal AI study partner. Plus, you'll get access to hundreds of additional questions, helping you move closer to passing your exam with confidence. The next time you're feeling unsure or stuck, give it a try.
How often must a South Dakota real estate license be renewed? Is it A, every 2 years, B, annually, C, every 3 years, or D, every 5 years? The answer is A, every 2 years. In South Dakota, real estate licenses must be renewed every 2 years. This biennial renewal ensures that agents remain up to date with industry standards and regulations. Which exam must be passed to obtain a real estate license in South Dakota? Is it A, National Real Estate Exam, B, South Dakota Broker Exam, C, South Dakota Law Exam, or D, South Dakota Real Estate Exam? The answer is D, South Dakota Real Estate Exam. To obtain a real estate license in South Dakota, candidates must pass the South Dakota Real Estate Exam. This exam tests knowledge of state-specific laws and general real estate practices. Continuing education requirements. What is the minimum number of continuing education hours required for a real estate license renewal in South Dakota? Is it A, 12 hours, B, 24 hours, C, 36 hours, or D, 48 hours? The answer is B, 24 hours. South Dakota requires real estate licensees to complete 24 hours of continuing education every 2 years, with specific hours dedicated to mandatory topics to ensure licensees remain knowledgeable about industry standards. Which of the following is a mandatory topic that must be included in the continuing education for South Dakota real estate licensees? Is it A, environmental hazards, B, marketing strategies, C, fair housing, or D, property management? The answer is C, fair housing. South Dakota requires that continuing education include courses on fair housing to ensure compliance and understanding of laws that prevent discrimination in real estate transactions. How often must South Dakota real estate licensees renew their license? Is it A, every 2 years, B, annually, C, every 3 years, or D, every 5 years? The answer is A, every 2 years. In South Dakota, real estate licenses must be renewed every 2 years. This biennial renewal ensures that licensees remain up to date with current laws and practices. Which agency is responsible for overseeing the continuing education requirements for real estate professionals in South Dakota? Is it A, Department of Education, B, Department of Revenue, C, Board of Realtors, or D, South Dakota Real Estate Commission? The answer is D, South Dakota Real Estate Commission. The South Dakota Real Estate Commission oversees the continuing education requirements, ensuring that all licensed professionals meet the educational standards set by the state. Let's continue with South Dakota real estate laws and regulations. South Dakota-Specific Fair Housing Laws. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota Fair Housing Law? Is it A, to prevent discrimination in housing-related activities, B, to regulate the pricing of real estate properties, C, to manage real estate agent licensing requirements, or D, to establish zoning laws for property development? The answer is A, to prevent discrimination in housing-related activities. The South Dakota Fair Housing Law aims to eliminate discrimination in housing-related activities, ensuring all individuals have equal access to housing opportunities regardless of their protected class status. Which of the following is considered a protected class under South Dakota Fair Housing Laws? Is it A, employment status, B, education level, C, national origin, or D, political affiliation? The answer is C, national origin. Protected classes under South Dakota Fair Housing Laws include race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, and national origin, ensuring these groups are not discriminated against in housing. Under South Dakota Fair Housing Laws, which action is considered discriminatory? Is it A, offering a discount to new tenants, B, refusing to rent based on race, C, setting a pet policy for tenants, or D, requiring a security deposit? The answer is B, refusing to rent based on race. Refusing to rent a property to someone due to their race is a discriminatory action prohibited under South Dakota Fair Housing Laws, which protect against discrimination based on race. What is a landlord's obligation under South Dakota Fair Housing Laws concerning disability accommodations? Is it A, provide free housing to individuals with disabilities, B, ignore all requests for modifications, C, charge extra fees for disabled tenants, or D, make reasonable accommodations for disabilities? The answer is D, make reasonable accommodations for disabilities. Landlords must make reasonable accommodations for tenants with disabilities, such as allowing service animals or modifying lease terms to ensure equal access to housing. How does South Dakota Fair Housing Law address familial status discrimination? Is it A, prohibits discrimination against families with children, B, allows landlords to refuse families with children, C, requires higher rent for families with children, or D, mandates separate housing for families? The answer is A, prohibits discrimination against families with children. South Dakota Fair Housing Law prohibits discrimination based on familial status, protecting families with children under 18 and pregnant women from unfair treatment in housing. What is required for a real estate advertisement to comply with South Dakota Fair Housing Laws? Is it A, include the price of the property, B, mention the property's location, C, avoid language that suggests preference based on race or other protected classes, or D, state the property's size? The answer is C, avoid language that suggests preference based on race or other protected classes. South Dakota Fair Housing Laws require that advertisements do not suggest preference or discrimination against any protected class. This ensures equal housing opportunities for all individuals, regardless of their background. South Dakota-specific contract requirements. What is the minimum requirement for a real estate purchase agreement in South Dakota to be considered legally enforceable? Is it A, oral agreement between parties? B, written agreement signed by both parties? C, verbal agreement witnessed by a notary? Or D, electronic communication confirming terms? The answer is B, written agreement signed by both parties. In South Dakota, a real estate purchase agreement must be in writing to be enforceable. This requirement is in line with the Statute of Frauds, which aims to prevent fraud and misunderstandings. In South Dakota, what is a unique requirement for a real estate broker's contract with a client? Is it A, must be notarized? B, must include a personal guarantee? C, must specify a termination date? Or D, must be filed with the state? The answer is C, must specify a termination date. South Dakota law requires that a broker's contract with a client must include a specific termination date. This provision ensures clarity and avoids indefinite obligations. Which party is responsible for disclosing environmental hazards in a South Dakota real estate transaction? Is it A, seller, B, buyer, C, real estate agent, or D, local government? The answer is A, seller. In South Dakota, the seller is responsible for disclosing any known environmental hazards to the buyer. This obligation helps protect buyers from undisclosed risks associated with the property. What is required for a valid amendment to a real estate contract in South Dakota? Is it A, oral agreement confirmed by email? B, mutual verbal consent? C, approval from the real estate agent? Or D, written and signed by all parties? The answer is D, written and signed by all parties. For an amendment to be valid in South Dakota, it must be in writing and signed by all parties involved. This ensures that changes are mutually agreed upon and legally binding. How long after a real estate transaction must records be retained according to South Dakota law? Is it A, 3 years, B, 5 years, C, 7 years, or D, 10 years? The answer is B, 5 years. South Dakota law mandates that real estate transaction records be retained for at least 5 years. This requirement helps ensure accountability and provides a reference in case of disputes. What is a distinct requirement for a real estate contract to be valid in South Dakota? Is it A, a verbal agreement, B, a witness signature, C, a legal description of the property, or D, a notary public seal? The answer is C, a legal description of the property. In South Dakota, a real estate contract must include a legal description of the property, which is a detailed description recognized by law to be considered valid and enforceable.
If you're finding this helpful, please take a minute to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, useful tips, and complimentary study sessions with Birdsy.
Overview of South Dakota real estate statutes. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota Real Estate Commission? Is it A, to license real estate professionals and enforce compliance with laws? B, to set property tax rates across the state? C, to manage real estate transactions directly? Or D, to provide real estate investment advice to the public? The answer is A, to license real estate professionals and enforce compliance with laws. The South Dakota Real Estate Commission is responsible for licensing real estate professionals, ensuring compliance with state laws, and protecting consumer interests in real estate transactions. Which of the following is a requirement for obtaining a real estate license in South Dakota? Is it A, owning property in South Dakota? B, holding a degree in real estate? C, completing approved pre-licensing education? Or D, having a minimum of 5 years of real estate experience? The answer is C, completing approved pre-licensing education. Applicants must complete approved pre-licensing education, pass the real estate exam, and meet age and background requirements to obtain a real estate license in South Dakota. Under South Dakota law, what is the maximum fine the Real Estate Commission can impose for a single violation? Is it A, $500, B, $1,000, C, $1,500, or D, $2,500? The answer is D, $2,500. The South Dakota Real Estate Commission can impose a maximum fine of $2,500 for a single violation of real estate laws or regulations. What is required for a real estate contract to be enforceable in South Dakota? Is it A, an oral agreement between the parties, B, a written contract signed by the parties, C, a verbal promise witnessed by a third party, or D, an email confirmation from both parties? The answer is B, a written contract signed by the parties. For a real estate contract to be enforceable in South Dakota, it must be in writing, signed by the parties involved, and include all essential terms. Now, let's look at South Dakota property ownership and land use. Types of property ownership, e.g., fee simple, leasehold, joint tenancy. What is the primary characteristic of a fee simple estate in South Dakota? Is it A, it is limited to a fixed term, B, it requires the owner to pay rent, C, it provides unlimited duration and transfer rights, or D, it is shared with the government? The answer is C, it provides unlimited duration and transfer rights. A fee simple estate is the most complete form of property ownership, providing the owner with unlimited duration and the right to transfer the property freely. In South Dakota, which type of property ownership allows for automatic inheritance by the surviving owner upon the death of one owner? Is it A, tenancy in common, B, joint tenancy, C, leasehold estate, or D, fee simple? The answer is B, joint tenancy. Joint tenancy includes the right of survivorship, meaning that upon the death of one owner, the property automatically passes to the surviving owner. Which type of property ownership in South Dakota is characterized by a tenant's right to occupy land or buildings for a specified period? Is it A, leasehold estate, B, fee simple, C, joint tenancy, or D, tenancy in common? The answer is A, leasehold estate. A leasehold estate grants the tenant the right to use and occupy land or buildings for a set time, typically in exchange for rent. What distinguishes tenancy in common from joint tenancy in South Dakota property ownership? Is it A, all owners must have equal shares, B, ownership is automatically transferred upon death, C, it requires a formal agreement, or D, each owner's share can be sold or inherited independently? The answer is D, each owner's share can be sold or inherited independently. Tenancy in common allows each owner to have an individual share that can be sold or inherited independently, unlike joint tenancy, which includes the right of survivorship. Which type of property ownership in South Dakota allows an owner to possess and control their property indefinitely? Is it A, leasehold estate, B, fee simple, C, joint tenancy, or D, tenancy by the entirety? The answer is B, fee simple. Fee simple ownership provides the owner with indefinite possession and control over the property, making it the most comprehensive form of ownership. Which type of property ownership in South Dakota allows an owner to sell their interest without the consent of other co-owners? Is it A, joint tenancy, B, tenancy in common, C, leasehold estate, or D, fee simple? The answer is B, tenancy in common. Tenancy in common allows each owner to sell or transfer their share independently. Unlike joint tenancy, there is no right of survivorship, and each owner can act without needing permission from others. Public versus private land use controls. Which of the following is a primary function of zoning laws in South Dakota? Is it A, to increase property taxes, B, to regulate land use and prevent incompatible uses, C, to allocate public funds, or D, to establish historical landmarks? The answer is B, to regulate land use and prevent incompatible uses. Zoning laws are essential for land use regulation, determining how land can be used in different areas. They help prevent conflicts between incompatible land uses, such as industrial and residential areas. What is an easement in the context of South Dakota property ownership? Is it A, a right to use another's land for a specific purpose, B, a fee paid for land development, C, a restriction on building height, or D, a tax incentive for land conservation? The answer is A, a right to use another's land for a specific purpose. An easement grants a non-owner the right to use a portion of someone else's land for a specific purpose, such as utility lines or access roads, without owning it. In South Dakota, who typically enforces private land use controls? Is it A, state government, B, local zoning boards, C, homeowners associations, or D, federal agencies? The answer is C, homeowners associations. Private land use controls, such as deed restrictions, are usually enforced by homeowners associations or through legal action by affected property owners. What is the primary purpose of a variance in South Dakota zoning laws? Is it A, to increase property value, B, to change zoning classification, C, to enforce zoning compliance, or D, to provide exceptions to zoning regulations? The answer is D, to provide exceptions to zoning regulations. A variance allows property owners to deviate from strict zoning rules due to unique circumstances, ensuring that zoning laws do not cause unnecessary hardship or injustice. Land use and zoning laws. What is the primary purpose of zoning laws in South Dakota? Is it A, to increase property taxes, B, to regulate land use and ensure orderly development, C, to reduce state government oversight, or D, to promote agricultural development exclusively? The answer is B, to regulate land use and ensure orderly development. Zoning laws in South Dakota are designed to regulate land use to ensure orderly development, protect property values, and prevent land use conflicts. They categorize land into zones such as residential, commercial, and industrial. In South Dakota, what is the role of a conditional use permit in land zoning? Is it A, it changes the zoning classification of a property, B, it eliminates the need for zoning compliance, C, it permits a non-conforming use under specific conditions, or D, it is used to increase property taxes? The answer is C. It permits a non-conforming use under specific conditions. A conditional use permit allows a property owner to use their land in a way not typically permitted within the zoning district, provided they meet specific conditions set by the local zoning authority. Which entity typically enforces zoning regulations in South Dakota? Is it A, local government, B, state government, C, federal government, or D, private developers? The answer is A, local government. In South Dakota, local governments, such as city or county planning departments, are responsible for enforcing zoning regulations to ensure compliance with local land use policies. What is a variance in the context of South Dakota zoning laws? Is it A, a change in property ownership, B, an increase in property taxes, C, a new zoning classification, or D, an exception to zoning ordinances? The answer is D, an exception to zoning ordinances. A variance is a legal exception to zoning ordinances granted to a property owner, allowing them to use the land in a way that deviates from zoning regulations due to unique circumstances. How do South Dakota zoning laws typically categorize land? Is it A, by property owner, B, by tax revenue, C, by land use type, or D, by population density? The answer is C, by land use type. Zoning laws in South Dakota categorize land into different zones, such as residential, commercial, industrial, and agricultural, each with specific use restrictions to guide development and land use. In South Dakota, what is a planned unit development primarily designed to achieve? Is it A, to restrict residential development, B, to allow flexibility in zoning regulations, C, to increase property taxes, or D, to preserve agricultural land? The answer is B, to allow flexibility in zoning regulations. A planned unit development in South Dakota is designed to encourage innovative land use planning and to allow flexibility in zoning regulations. It helps integrate residential, commercial, and recreational spaces harmoniously.
Stuck on a question? Just think of the Birdsy link in the description as your friendly neighborhood superhero, swooping in to save the day with answers. Feel free to explore it now and return to continue. Simply hit pause, and we'll be waiting when you get back.
Condominiums and HOAs. Under South Dakota law, which entity typically manages the common areas in a condominium? Is it A, individual unit owners, B, homeowners association, C, property management company, or D, state government? The answer is B, homeowners association. In South Dakota, the management of common areas in a condominium is usually handled by the homeowners association. The HOA is responsible for maintenance, repairs, and ensuring compliance with community rules. What is a primary advantage of owning a condominium in South Dakota? Is it A, shared maintenance costs, B, exclusive land ownership, C, exemption from property taxes, or D, unlimited customization options? The answer is A, shared maintenance costs. A primary advantage of owning a condominium in South Dakota is shared maintenance costs. This allows individual owners to pay a portion of expenses for common area upkeep, reducing personal maintenance responsibilities. In South Dakota, what must a condominium association provide to potential buyers before a sale? Is it A, a deed of trust, B, a property survey, C, a resale certificate, or D, an appraisal report? The answer is C, a resale certificate. Before a sale, a condominium association in South Dakota must provide a resale certificate. This document includes important details about the association's financial status, rules, and any pending litigation. What is a common restriction imposed by South Dakota HOAs in condominium communities? Is it A, limiting the number of vehicles, B, mandating exterior paint colors, C, prohibiting rental of units, or D, restricting pet ownership? The answer is D, restricting pet ownership. South Dakota HOAs often impose restrictions on pet ownership to maintain community standards and minimize disturbances. These restrictions can include size limits, breed restrictions, or the number of pets allowed. Environmental issues and agricultural land use. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota Agricultural Land Assessment Implementation and Oversight Advisory Task Force? Is it A, to enforce environmental regulations on agricultural lands, B, to advise on the assessment of agricultural lands for tax purposes, C, to manage state-owned agricultural properties, or D, to implement conservation programs for farmers? The answer is B, to advise on the assessment of agricultural lands for tax purposes. The task force provides recommendations to ensure fair and accurate assessments of agricultural land, which is crucial for equitable taxation and land use planning. Which of the following best describes a conservation easement in South Dakota? Is it A, a temporary restriction on land use for agricultural purposes, B, an agreement to convert agricultural land into residential development. C, a voluntary agreement to protect land from certain types of development. Or D, a government mandate to reduce property taxes. The answer is C, a voluntary agreement to protect land from certain types of development. A conservation easement is a voluntary, legally binding agreement that limits certain types of uses or prevents development to protect land's conservation values. How does South Dakota's Right to Farm Act protect agricultural operations? Is it A, it shields farmers from nuisance lawsuits related to farming activities? B, it provides financial subsidies for sustainable farming practices? C, it mandates environmental assessments for all new farms? Or D, it requires farmers to register their operations with the state? The answer is A, it shields farmers from nuisance lawsuits related to farming activities. The Right to Farm Act protects farmers from nuisance lawsuits by neighbors due to standard farming practices, thus safeguarding agricultural operations from legal challenges. What is a key environmental concern associated with agricultural land use in South Dakota? Is it A, increased urban development? B, overpopulation of wildlife? C, lack of water resources? Or D, soil erosion? The answer is D, soil erosion. Soil erosion is a significant concern as it can lead to loss of fertile topsoil, impacting agricultural productivity and contributing to waterway sedimentation. Let's continue with a look at South Dakota agency law and ethics. Agency relationship laws. In South Dakota, which of the following is a duty that an agent owes to their principal under agency relationship laws? Is it A, duty to compete? B, duty to conceal? C, duty of loyalty? Or D, duty to terminate? The answer is C, duty of loyalty. In South Dakota, agents owe their principals duties of loyalty, confidentiality, disclosure, and accounting, among others. These duties ensure that agents act in the best interest of their principals. Which of the following scenarios would most likely lead to a breach of fiduciary duty in South Dakota? Is it A, an agent provides a market analysis to the principal? B, an agent discloses confidential information to a third party? C, an agent negotiates the best possible deal for the principal? Or D, an agent follows the principal's lawful instructions? The answer is B, an agent discloses confidential information to a third party. A breach of fiduciary duty occurs when an agent fails to act in the best interest of their principal, such as by disclosing confidential information without consent. Under South Dakota agency laws, which type of agency relationship is created when an agent acts on behalf of a principal without explicit agreement? Is it A, implied agency? B, express agency? C, dual agency? Or D, general agency? The answer is A, implied agency. An implied agency arises from the conduct of the parties, where the agent acts on behalf of the principal without a formal agreement. What is the primary ethical obligation of a real estate agent in South Dakota when representing a buyer in a transaction? Is it A, to maximize the agent's commission? B, to prioritize seller's interests? C, to ensure confidentiality of the seller? Or D, to act in the best interest of the buyer? The answer is D, to act in the best interest of the buyer. The primary ethical obligation is to act in the best interest of the buyer, ensuring loyalty, confidentiality, and full disclosure throughout the transaction. Fiduciary duties and client representation. In South Dakota, which fiduciary duty requires an agent to act in the best interests of their client, even above their own interests? Is it A, duty of care? B, duty of loyalty? C, duty of disclosure? Or D, duty of confidentiality? The answer is B, duty of loyalty. The duty of loyalty compels an agent to prioritize the client's interests above their own. This ensures that the agent acts in a manner that benefits the client, avoiding conflicts of interest. What is the primary purpose of the fiduciary duty of confidentiality in South Dakota agency law? Is it A, to ensure accurate financial transactions, B, to provide full disclosure to third parties, C, to protect clients' private information, or D, to facilitate open communication with other agents? The answer is C, to protect clients' private information. Confidentiality protects the client's private information from being disclosed without consent, ensuring trust between the agent and client. This duty remains even after the agency relationship ends. Which fiduciary duty involves the agent's responsibility to disclose all material facts to their client in South Dakota? Is it A, duty of disclosure, B, duty of loyalty, C, duty of accounting, or D, duty of obedience? The answer is A, duty of disclosure. The duty of disclosure requires agents to inform clients of any material facts that might affect their decisions, ensuring informed consent and transparency in transactions. How does the fiduciary duty of obedience affect an agent's actions in South Dakota real estate transactions? Is it A, it allows agents to act on their own discretion, B, it requires agents to prioritize their own judgment, C, it mandates agents to disclose all conflicts of interest, or D, it requires agents to follow lawful instructions? The answer is D, it requires agents to follow lawful instructions. The duty of obedience requires agents to follow the lawful instructions of their clients, ensuring that the agent's actions align with the client's objectives and legal boundaries. South Dakota Ethics Guidelines and Enforcement. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota Real Estate Commission in terms of ethics enforcement? Is it A, to protect the public from unethical real estate practices, B, to increase real estate sales in the state, C, to provide financial assistance to real estate agents, or D, to determine real estate market trends? The answer is A, to protect the public from unethical real estate practices. The South Dakota Real Estate Commission's primary purpose is to enforce ethical standards to protect the public from unethical real estate practices and ensure that licensees adhere to legal and ethical guidelines. Which of the following actions could lead to disciplinary measures under South Dakota's ethics guidelines? Is it A, offering a property at a competitive market price, B, misrepresenting property details to a client, C, providing accurate property disclosures, or D, negotiating terms on behalf of a client? The answer is B, misrepresenting property details to a client. Misrepresentation of property details is a violation of ethical guidelines as it can mislead clients and harm the integrity of the real estate profession. How can a South Dakota real estate agent ensure compliance with the state's ethical guidelines? Is it A, avoiding difficult transactions, B, relying solely on personal judgment, C, delegating ethical responsibilities to a colleague, or D, attending continuing education courses? The answer is D, attending continuing education courses. Regularly attending continuing education courses helps agents stay updated on legal and ethical standards, ensuring compliance with state guidelines. What is a potential consequence for a real estate agent found guilty of ethical violations in South Dakota? Is it A, increase in commission rates, B, mandatory community service, C, license suspension, or D, public recognition? The answer is C, license suspension. License suspension is a possible consequence for ethical violations, reflecting the seriousness of maintaining professional standards in real estate practice. Now let's review South Dakota property valuation. Basic principles of property valuation. What is the primary purpose of conducting a property valuation in South Dakota? Is it A, to estimate property taxes, B, to determine market value, C, to assess property insurance needs, or D, to evaluate neighborhood development? The answer is B, to determine market value. Property valuation is primarily conducted to determine the market value of a property. This is crucial for various purposes such as taxation, sales, and financing. Accurate valuation ensures fair transactions. Which of the following is not a method used in property valuation? Is it A, sales comparison approach, B, cost approach, C, income approach, or D, depreciation analysis? The answer is D, depreciation analysis. The three primary methods of property valuation are the sales comparison approach, cost approach, and income approach. The depreciation analysis is not a standalone method but a component of the cost approach. How does the principle of substitution affect property valuation? Is it A, it sets a ceiling price based on substitutes, B, it dictates the minimum property value, C, it increases property value, or D, it has no effect on valuation? The answer is A, it sets a ceiling price based on substitutes. The principle of substitution states that a property's value is influenced by the cost of acquiring an equivalent substitute property. This principle helps in setting a ceiling price during valuation. Which factor is least likely to directly affect property valuation in South Dakota? Is it A, local economic conditions, B, interest rates, C, global political events, or D, property location? The answer is C, global political events. While local economic conditions, interest rates, and location significantly impact property valuation, global political events are less likely to have a direct effect unless they influence local economic conditions. Sales comparison, cost, and income approaches. What is the primary purpose of the sales comparison approach in property valuation? Is it A, to assess the replacement cost of a property, B, to estimate value based on recent sales of similar properties, C, to calculate potential rental income, or D, to determine depreciation rates? The answer is B, to estimate value based on recent sales of similar properties. The sales comparison approach is used to estimate the value of a property by comparing it to similar properties that have recently sold. This method relies on market data to determine value. In the cost approach to property valuation, which component estimates the cost to construct a building with similar utility using modern materials and standards? Is it A, depreciation cost, B, reproduction cost, C, replacement cost, or D, market cost? The answer is C, replacement cost. The replacement cost estimates the cost to construct a building with similar utility using modern materials and standards, which is a key component of the cost approach. Which method is most suitable for valuing a commercial property with stable rental income? Is it A, sales comparison approach, B, cost approach, C, depreciation approach, or D, income approach? The answer is D, income approach. The income approach is most suitable for valuing commercial properties with stable rental income, as it focuses on the property's ability to generate future income. When using the sales comparison approach, what is the purpose of making adjustments to the sales prices of comparable properties? Is it A, to account for differences in property features and conditions, B, to increase the value of the subject property, C, to determine the replacement cost of the property, or D, to establish a fixed market value? The answer is A, to account for differences in property features and conditions. Adjustments in the sales comparison approach ensure that differences between the subject property and comparables are accounted for, providing a more accurate valuation.
Notice the code in the corner? When you're stumped by a question, enter it at birdsy.ai for immediate help. Enjoy complimentary study sessions and access to hundreds of additional questions to help you pass your exam with confidence.
Let's check your understanding of South Dakota real estate financing. Mortgage loans and financing options. What is the maximum loan-to-value ratio allowed for a conventional mortgage loan in South Dakota without requiring private mortgage insurance? Is it A, 70%, B, 75%, C, 80%, or D, 85%? The answer is C, 80%. In South Dakota, like most states, conventional mortgage loans typically require private mortgage insurance if the LTV exceeds 80%. This means borrowers need at least a 20% down payment to avoid this requirement. Which government-backed loan program is most commonly used by first-time homebuyers in South Dakota due to its low down payment requirement? Is it A, Federal Housing Administration, FHA loan, B, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, VA loan, C, U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA loan, or D, conventional loan? The answer is A, Federal Housing Administration, FHA loan. The FHA loan program is popular among first-time homebuyers in South Dakota because it allows for a down payment as low as 3.5%, making homeownership more accessible. What type of mortgage allows South Dakota borrowers to refinance their home with the potential for lower interest rates without traditional income verification? Is it A, cash-out refinance, B, streamline refinance, C, adjustable rate mortgage, or D, fixed rate mortgage? The answer is B, streamline refinance. The Streamline Refinance program is designed for existing FHA borrowers, allowing them to refinance with less documentation and potentially lower interest rates, making it easier to manage mortgage payments. In South Dakota, which mortgage option specifically benefits veterans by offering no down payment and no private mortgage insurance? Is it A, B, C, VA loan, or D, conventional loan? The answer is C, loan. The VA loan program is exclusively for veterans and offers significant benefits, such as no down payment and no PMI, making it a highly favorable option for qualifying individuals. Loan applications and approval processes. What is the maximum allowable interest rate for a personal loan in South Dakota? Is it A, 20%, B, 30%, C, 40%, or D, 25%? The answer is B, 30%. In South Dakota, the maximum allowable interest rate for personal loans is generally capped at 30% per annum, subject to certain conditions and lender types. This ensures borrowers are protected from excessively high interest rates. Which document is crucial for verifying a borrower's income during the loan approval process in South Dakota? Is it A, credit report, B, bank statement, C, pay stub, or D, tax return? The answer is C, pay stub. A pay stub is a critical document for verifying a borrower's income, providing lenders with proof of earnings and employment stability, which is essential for assessing loan eligibility and risk. In South Dakota, which factor most significantly impacts the approval of a mortgage loan? Is it A, credit score, B, age, C, marital status, or D, number of dependents? The answer is A, credit score. Credit score is a crucial factor in mortgage loan approval as it reflects the borrower's creditworthiness and risk level, influencing the lender's decision on loan terms and interest rates. What is the typical time frame for processing a home loan application in South Dakota? Is it A, 10 to 15 days, B, 20 to 25 days, C, 50 to 60 days, or D, 30 to 45 days? The answer is D, 30 to 45 days. The typical time frame for processing a home loan application in South Dakota ranges from 30 to 45 days, depending on the lender's efficiency and the complexity of the application. South Dakota mortgage disclosure requirements. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota mortgage disclosure requirements? Is it A, to ensure transparency and protect consumers, B, to increase the number of approved loans, C, to reduce the interest rates on mortgages, or D, to simplify the loan application process? The answer is A, to ensure transparency and protect consumers. The South Dakota mortgage disclosure requirements aim to ensure transparency and protect consumers by mandating clear disclosure of loan terms, costs, and conditions to borrowers. Which of the following is not typically included in the South Dakota mortgage disclosure documents? Is it A, loan terms, B, cost of the loan, C, borrower's personal credit score, or D, conditions of the loan? The answer is C, borrower's personal credit score. The disclosure documents usually include loan terms, costs, and conditions, but do not typically include personal credit scores of the borrower. Under South Dakota law, when must a lender provide the mortgage disclosure to the borrower? Is it A, on the day of closing, B, at least 3 business days before closing, C, 1 week after closing, or D, immediately after loan approval? The answer is B, at least 3 business days before closing. Lenders must provide the mortgage disclosure at least 3 business days before the closing of the mortgage to ensure borrowers have enough time to review the terms. What is a key component that must be disclosed under South Dakota mortgage regulations? Is it A, borrower's employment history, B, lender's profit margin, C, the loan's maturity date, or D, annual percentage rate? The answer is D, annual percentage rate. The annual percentage rate is crucial as it represents the total cost of borrowing, including interest and fees, and must be disclosed to borrowers. South Dakota-specific loan programs. Which South Dakota-specific loan program is designed to assist first-time homebuyers with down payment and closing cost assistance? Is it A, Veterans Affairs Loan, B, South Dakota Housing Development Authority First-Time Homebuyer Program, C, Federal Housing Administration FHA Loan, or D, USDA Rural Development Loan? The answer is B, South Dakota Housing Development Authority First-Time Homebuyer Program. The South Dakota Housing Development Authority offers programs specifically aimed at first-time homebuyers, providing financial assistance for down payments and closing costs to make homeownership more accessible. What is the primary purpose of the Governor's House program in South Dakota? Is it A, to provide luxury housing options, B, to fund large-scale commercial developments, C, to offer affordable housing for income-qualified buyers, or D, to renovate historic properties? The answer is C, to offer affordable housing for income-qualified buyers. The Governor's House program aims to provide affordable housing solutions by offering low-cost homes to income-qualified buyers, thereby addressing housing affordability issues in South Dakota. Which South Dakota loan program provides assistance specifically for Native American homebuyers? Is it A, Fannie Mae Home Ready, B, HUD Section 184 Loan, C, South Dakota Housing Development Authority Rural Home Program, or D, Native American Homeownership Program? The answer is D, Native American Homeownership Program. The Native American Homeownership Program is tailored to support Native American homebuyers by offering access to affordable mortgage options and financial education in South Dakota. What is a key feature of the South Dakota HERO program? Is it A, provides down payment assistance, B, offers interest-free loans. C, targets only military veterans. Or D, renovates foreclosed properties. The answer is A, provides down payment assistance. The HERO program offers down payment assistance to eligible homebuyers in South Dakota, making it easier for them to afford the initial costs associated with purchasing a home. South Dakota Housing Development Authority. What is the primary goal of the South Dakota Housing Development Authority? Is it A, to provide affordable housing options for residents? B, to regulate real estate transactions in South Dakota? C, to offer insurance for housing developers? Or D, to manage state housing data and statistics? The answer is A, to provide affordable housing options for residents. The SDHDA aims to provide affordable housing options for South Dakota residents, focusing on low-income families and individuals. They offer various programs to assist in financing and development. Which program is not offered by the SDHDA to support affordable housing? Is it A, first-time homebuyer loans? B, grants for luxury home construction? C, rental housing development? Or D, home improvement loans? The answer is B, grants for luxury home construction. The SDHDA offers several programs, including first-time homebuyer loans and rental housing development, but does not provide direct grants for luxury home construction. How does the SDHDA primarily fund its housing programs? Is it A, state tax revenue? B, federal grants? C, issuance of tax-exempt bonds? Or D, private donations? The answer is C, issuance of tax-exempt bonds. SDHDA primarily funds its programs through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds, which allow them to offer lower interest rates for housing development and financing. What type of assistance does SDHDA provide to first-time homebuyers? Is it A, mortgage insurance? B, free home inspections? C, homebuyer education courses? Or D, down payment and closing cost assistance? The answer is D, down payment and closing cost assistance. SDHDA offers down payment and closing cost assistance to first-time homebuyers, making it easier to afford the upfront costs associated with purchasing a home.
Don't forget to comment below with your tips, challenges, and thoughts on exam preparation. Your experiences can make a big difference for others.
Let's review some South Dakota disclosure requirements and forms. South Dakota-specific disclosure requirements. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota Property Condition Disclosure Statement? Is it A, to calculate property taxes? B, to inform buyers about the property's condition? C, to estimate property value? Or D, to determine mortgage eligibility? The answer is B, to inform buyers about the property's condition. The South Dakota Property Condition Disclosure Statement aims to inform potential buyers about the condition of the property, ensuring transparency and enabling informed decision-making during the real estate transaction. Which party is responsible for completing the South Dakota lead-based paint disclosure form? Is it A, the buyer? B, the real estate agent? C, the seller or landlord? Or D, the home inspector? The answer is C, the seller or landlord. The seller or landlord is responsible for completing the lead-based paint disclosure form to inform potential buyers or tenants about the presence of lead-based paint hazards in properties built before 1978. When must the South Dakota Property Condition Disclosure Statement be provided to a potential buyer? Is it A, after closing the sale? B, during the home inspection? C, after the buyer's offer is accepted? Or D, before the buyer makes a written offer? The answer is D, before the buyer makes a written offer. The disclosure statement must be provided before the buyer makes a written offer. ensuring they have all necessary information to make an informed decision about the purchase. What information is not typically included in the South Dakota Property Condition Disclosure Statement? Is it A, a list of previous owners, B, information on structural issues, C, details about water damage, or D, presence of hazardous materials? The answer is A, a list of previous owners. The disclosure statement does not typically include a list of previous owners, focusing instead on the current condition and any known issues with the property. Commonly used South Dakota forms. Which form is commonly used in South Dakota to disclose the condition of a property? Is it A, buyer's acknowledgement form, B, seller's property condition disclosure statement, C, lead-based paint disclosure, or D, environmental hazards report? The answer is B, seller's property condition disclosure statement. The seller's property condition disclosure statement is a mandatory form in South Dakota used to inform buyers about known issues with the property. It helps ensure transparency and protect both parties in a transaction. What is the primary purpose of the South Dakota lead-based paint disclosure form? Is it A, to disclose general property defects, B, to outline the terms of sale, C, to inform about lead paint hazards, or D, to provide a market analysis? The answer is C, to inform about lead paint hazards. The lead-based paint disclosure form is used to inform buyers of potential lead paint hazards in properties built before 1978. It is a federal requirement to protect buyers from health risks associated with lead exposure. In South Dakota, which form is used to outline the dual agency relationship in a real estate transaction? Is it A, dual agency disclosure, B, exclusive right to sell agreement, C, agency disclosure brochure, or D, confidentiality agreement? The answer is A, dual agency disclosure. The dual agency disclosure form is used when a single agent represents both the buyer and seller in a transaction. It ensures that both parties are aware of and consent to the dual representation. What is the primary function of the South Dakota Agency Disclosure Brochure? Is it A, to list property conditions, B, to provide market analysis, C, to confirm the sale price, or D, to explain agency relationships? The answer is D, to explain agency relationship. The Agency Disclosure Brochure educates parties about the types of agency relationships available in South Dakota, including buyer's agent, seller's agent, and dual agent, helping them make informed decisions. Specific procedures for transactions. What is the primary purpose of South Dakota's property disclosure statement in real estate transactions? Is it A, to determine the property's market value, B, to inform buyers about the property's condition, C, to list the property's tax history, or D, to provide a warranty of the property? The answer is B, to inform buyers about the property's condition. The primary purpose of the South Dakota Property Disclosure Statement is to ensure transparency by providing buyers with essential information about the property's condition, reducing the risk of disputes post-transaction. Which form is required by South Dakota law to disclose the presence of lead-based paint in homes built before 1978? Is it A, lead-based paint disclosure, B, environmental hazard disclosure, C, property condition disclosure, or D, material fact disclosure? The answer is A, lead-based paint disclosure. The lead-based paint disclosure is mandated for homes built before 1978 to ensure buyers are aware of potential health risks associated with lead-based paint. In South Dakota, what must a seller disclose if they are aware of a material defect in the property? Is it A, the seller's reason for moving, B, the property's appraisal value, C, the material defect itself, Or D, the neighborhood crime rate? The answer is C, the material defect itself. Sellers in South Dakota must disclose any known material defects in the property to prospective buyers to prevent future legal disputes and ensure an informed purchasing decision. How long does a buyer in South Dakota have to rescind a contract after receiving the property disclosure statement? Is it A, 1 business day, B, 5 business days, C, 7 business days, or D, 3 business days? The answer is D, 3 business days. In South Dakota, a buyer has 3 business days to rescind a contract after receiving the property disclosure statement, allowing time to review and consider any disclosed issues.
Thanks for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to our channel for more practice exams, tips, and tricks. And don't forget to visit Birdsy.ai for complimentary study sessions with Birdsy, your AI-powered study partner.